So would you like to go back and watch it at any point in time or share it with a friend? You can find it on demand on our MPI Academy by the end of the day today. And then I will cover how you can earn your clock hour. Additionally, should you need transcription or translation services, our partners at Wordly have made that possible for us today. You'll see that live button in the top menu bar of your screen, and you can select whatever language you need, and you will be good to go there. So one more quick thank you before I pass it on to Rachel and the Destinations DC team. Thank you for all you do for our industry and also for being incredible partners with us and sponsoring today's webinar. I have a quick video to play from them, so if y'all will direct your attention to the screen, I'll begin that now.
Being a part of the collective, I discovered DC.
Every time I'm here, I find a new building, a new historic place, a new community.
I think it's impossible not to be inspired.
DC really is a city designed for people to gather.
DC to me is a place that makes me feel different when I leave it.
DC is a place you leave feeling inspired to change the world.
The people, the intellect that lives here, the spirit that this city embodies. It's truly amazing, and I can't put it all into words, which is why you have to visit.
Incredible. I wish we could say we're actually all in DC right now with the Destinations DC team to do this webinar, but alas, we're not. We'll have to get a visit on the Bucks. All right, that is enough for me. I'll be in the background should you need anything. And I'm going to pass it over to MPI's very own Rachel Benedict, who's going to introduce our panel and our speakers today.
Thank you so much, Lexi. I appreciate you very much, and I appreciate my good friends with Destination DC. I think that is a really powerful video. And what I think is interesting is everyone's talking about what an awesome city DC is. And I think a lot of us know that, but what we're really going to dig into today is sort of the brains behind that city and the destination appeal behind that city and where that comes from. So I'm super excited to be here. If we haven't had the pleasure of meeting, my name's Rachel Benedict and I'm the Chief Revenue Officer here at MPI. And we couldn't be more thrilled to be partnering with Destination DC for today's session. So whether you're planning a large-scale convention or an intimate meeting, this webinar really is your chance to learn how Destination DC can make your event unforgettable. And I think what we have today is what I would call a power panel with two industry leaders, one being Melissa Riley, who is the Senior VP of Convention Sales and Services at Destination DC, the other being Miss Dianna Waldroup, who is the VP of Convention Services at Destination DC. Together, this dream team helps planners streamline logistics, build authentic attendee experiences, and unlock that insider access to the nation's capital. So what we're going to cover today is quite a few things. So as Lexi said, if you're taking notes, now's a great time, but we also will be sharing this information. But we're going to cover 4 key areas: how Destination DC simplifies event planning, why early engagement makes such a big difference in a world right now where everything seems to be last minute, including all of our registrations to events. Early engagement is key, and we're going to talk about why that's a difference maker. We're going to talk about tools for creating authentic DC experiences, and then we're going to have some real examples of event success stories. So talking is one thing, and sharing these stories is one thing, but then really seeing how they come to life is another, and we're going to do that. But before we dig into that, we're going to start with my kind of favorite area, only because I feel like it's gone on for so long that we have a lot of myths out there, and I would say misconceptions on what DMOs do and don't do. And for those that may or may not know, I spent a lot of time at a DMO prior to joining MPI, so this piece is near and dear to my heart. But there's a lot of misperceptions out there, things like DMOs come at a cost to every planner, or you don't trust that it's free, right? Doesn't make sense. We source your lead to every single member. So if you have a 10,000 person convention, yes, we're going to make sure that 10-room boutique hotel has that lead in hand. We are going to talk about, we're stealing credits and leads from our national sales offices, right? That there's this sort of push-pull with hotel national sales offices. And then we only want credit. That's another big thing we hear a lot about. And lastly, we only source citywide. So if you're on the DMO side, if you're my friends at Destination DC, they only want to talk to you if you have a large meeting. So these things are all completely and totally not true. And the important part is we're going to talk a little bit about why they're not true today. So I want to start with Melissa or Dianna, whoever wants to jump in. We know that these aren't true, as I mentioned, but can you expand a little bit about how these are false and what we can do to maybe put some of these myths to bed for good?
Yeah, I'll kick us off, Rachel. Thank you so much for having us today. It's an interesting time in the DMO world, or, those of you that go old school CVB, and now we're, placemaking as well as sourcing. And, there's so many different hats that DMOs wear these days, that kind of filtering through all that and getting to the core of what we're really good at is difficult at times. I was just at an industry session recently, and it was one of the questions from the audience was, what are your biggest challenges with DMOs? And the overwhelming answer from the planners on the panel was, well, nothing. Like, they're our partners. And I think that's great. I think I was relieved, quite frankly. But it's I think the bigger challenge, other than what we don't do, is the misnomer of kind of the unsung list of assets that we can do for you. And Rachel, you had mentioned that we only source large meetings. This is one of my biggest pain points, because we actually, most DMOs and at Destination DC, and I'll refer to us as DDC throughout the webinar, but at DDC, we have equally, if not more, human capital focused on small and intimate meetings than we do on large citywides. And it's so often that the citywides, the big boys, get all the glory and so forth, and the celebration of successes, and those folks are paraded through the streets on a chariot, celebrating their big impact and successes. But what people fail to understand is it's that business that's booked in the year for the year that is truly the make or break success for a destination. And for us, helping to facilitate those conversations between our hotels or unique venues and the small meetings, it's really imperative. And, it helps the organizer in a way that I think they don't quite understand. Because if we have an understanding of what a full portfolio of business looks like, we can help when it comes to difficult times of negotiations. We can say, don't look, Joe Hotel, at just one isolated opportunity or piece of business. We have to look at this for, the complete portfolio that's brought to the table and the potential impact down the line if this organization as a whole, fails to source Washington, D.C. or said destination. And then one of the things that we're most proud of, and Dianna, I'll let you dive into this more, is that on our services side, we really specialize in servicing those small opportunities as well. And Dianna, I'll let you take it from here.
Absolutely. Thank you. So we service intimate board retreats to large citywide conventions. And actually, our services are more impactful to the small and mid-sized meetings that maybe don't have these full planning teams. Our convention services team supports all types of meetings, including those that don't have room blocks. Say you're just looking for a place to hold your president's dinner, or you're looking for a venue for a reception. We'll help you. It doesn't have to include a room block to have our team work with you.
I think one of the things too, Melissa, that people fail to realize is that, as you said, those citywides, everyone thinks there's this sort of ticker tape parade for them. But one of the largest stakeholders for a DMO is their hotel community. And the real heroes to the hotels are the people who book those single hotel meetings, right? Who are eating, sleeping, drinking, and meeting in that hotel. So it's such an important piece to the puzzle for your really one of your most important stakeholders.
Absolutely. The conversation has shifted so much to food and beverage contribution lately from our hotels, and those individual meetings are the ones that bring it, to your point. Whereas, citywide, the headquarter hotel might benefit from a food and beverage activity. But on the whole, most of the hotels that are participating don't see any benefit. And so there is a whole conversation around food and beverage and how do we engage the citywide and so forth. Meanwhile, you have bird in hand already with the small meetings. So take advantage of how we can help facilitate that.
And let's demystify a little bit too the whole concept of free. We've all been taught there's nothing for free. So really dive in a little bit to that funding model, especially our corporate clients. They get real nervous when you're like it's free. They're like,
This comes up a lot, actually. For us, when we work with the smaller meetings, they don't believe it. Like we said, we service all groups, and I feel like they're not used to our intentions, I guess. So having people think of us as a value-added partner, so our support, it can be from venue sourcing to permits to promotional tools. It's already built into our hospitality ecosystem. And free doesn't mean lower quality. It just means accessible and backed by deep local expertise. So use us. We're here to help you have a great event.
And to that whole funding model structure, our biggest stakeholders are hotels. Like at DDC, for example, they're not our largest membership base, but they're our most lucrative. And so they have a very loud voice. And so DMOs predominantly, especially within the United States, are funded through the hotel tax, which is why you have to have, the commiserate rooms to go with space, etc. And so the community is quite vocal. And, we really try and we battle internally all the time with marketing because free sounds a little sleazy, like to Diana's point. And so, do you say complimentary? How do you position it so that it is, to Diana's point, not low quality, but, we really want to emphasize that it is in our best interest to fill the city as a whole. So, we're funded that way. We can help then, do any sort of extension of your planning through those avenues because we're not interested in, a pay to play type service.
I think that's important, really, especially for our planner audience, and also encouraging our planner audience to ask that very question. How are you funded? What does the model look like? Because I think what you'll find is it's a very transparent funding model. And everyone's really happy to kind of share that. And the idea being, if you go to DC, people, and you stay in one of those hotel rooms, you just put a down payment on their services. So why wouldn't you take advantage of that?
Absolutely. And, to your point, look around the world because outside of the United States is very different. They're not necessarily funded the same way. And so you won't see the same responsibility towards a room block. We work a lot on the global scale. And as we compete globally, it becomes more and more difficult. So understanding those dynamics is an imperative to your success.
And what about one of my other favorites, which is you're going to send that lead to everybody, no matter what, even if they've told you not to, it's going to every single hotel.
Yeah. So on the sales side, and I oversee both sales and services, whereas Diana is specialized in services. But, on the sales side, this one always makes me laugh because, it's the hotel, the small, very limited service, they might have exterior entrances, 45, 50 miles away from here. That's like, yeah, we can't wait to get that citywide and participate. And so we are very, during our discovery process with a customer, we have to understand, are you looking for luxury? Are you looking for a particular part of the city? Is there something specific that you're trying to centralize around? And we will help guide through that process and understand what hotels might be a better fit, because it is not one size fits all. And so that's where our expertise comes in. And, so oftentimes, like in a city like Washington, we have a lot of independent hotels. I was just at a brand new launch last week of a gorgeous small 72 room hotel who doesn't have a big name associated with it. And so those are the little gems in cities and destinations that you might not as an organizer be aware of, but we're certainly the subject matter expert in our own city and can help guide into, perhaps some unknown opportunities. And so I think that's where, we go through those process. We ask those qualifying questions. It might be a little, time consuming and annoying up front, but it only ends up benefiting us all at the end. So take that time, sit with your CVB partner, really let them know what your objective is at the end of the day. and we'll specialize those sourcing to a particular area, region, price point, etc., to make sure that we're not blanketing every member in the organization.
Absolutely. And it's the same for services. If you're looking for a boutique, waterfront, budget-friendly hotel venue, our sourcing reflects that. So you're not getting a long list. You're getting a thoughtful list. It's not about quality for us. It's about quantity. So our goal is to help you find the right fit, not just any fit. So same for services.
And then maybe Dianna too, or Melissa, speak to that whole, especially in DDC, speak how you actually partner with the national sales offices versus making it this competitive landscape that people tend to think exists.
Absolutely. We work with hotel sales team, not against them. So our role is here to support them and complement what they're doing already. So we're never competing. But it's a very strong kind of opinion out there. Most of our strongest partnerships, like Melissa said, is with our hotels, and that includes hotel national reps, sales reps. But we're often their boots on the ground. So we work together, and the planners benefit because they'll get faster responses, local insight, and it's just a better coordinated effort if we work together.
And at one point in time, it's actually a good reminder that we need to put something on the books, but we used to have annual partnership meetings with our global sales offices locally. That kind of changed a little bit with the dynamics in a post-COVID world. But, this conversation is a great, reminder that we need to get back and educate them on what's happening in Washington and really make sure that we are seamless between both entities and not the perception that we're competing. We're here to help every different phase of sales and or service process.
I love it. And the last baby we are going to put to bed right now is the whole credit, that we only want you to source the DMO so that they can get credit. That's it.
Yeah, this is a fun one. And we have actually internally done away with quite a few internal processes that only give credit for, helping but not really sourcing. It's in our interest at the end of the day, again, to just fill our hotels. Regardless of how the business comes to us, we want to be supportive in any way that we can. So, if you go through, an online platform, that's great. We're not just gonna, pick it and put it into our little coffers and, twist our mustaches at the end of the day to to get that credit and, say that we made our goals. For us at the end of the day, it's really to make sure that we have two audiences. Number one is the meeting organizer, and number two is that organizer's delegates, right? And so as long as both of those groups of individuals leave happy and satisfied at the end of the day, then that's all the credit that we need, because that's the proof in the pudding that keeps people coming back and coming to us directly.
I love that. And, hopefully we've done a good job addressing every one of these. But again, I really want to stress to our planner audience specifically, ask these questions. What you're going to find today is Destination DC is definitely the gold standard when it comes to DMOs. So while we can't promise you that everyone operates like this, what we can promise you is that you should ask those questions, and don't be afraid to ask them. How do you get credit? How do the salespeople get incentive? Those are things that we're happy to talk about, and our partners are happy to talk about, because there has been so many old wives' tales that have just grown over the years, and we really would like to be able to move forward with those. And in the spirit of moving forward, I'm going to transition us into a little bit more of the deep dive on today's agenda. So the first thing we're talking about is really Destination DC as your event planning resource. So to get us started, I want Melissa and Dianna to walk us through how Destination DC acts as that. And you mentioned this already, Dianna, but that extension of your planning team, covering everything from sort of the soup to nuts, the hotel sourcing, to that all coveted local intelligence. So Melissa, for those who are unfamiliar with Destination DC support, what does that relationship typically look like, knowing not any one two are the same, but what does it typically look like for planners?
Yeah. And, I think you just said the right word, and, buzzwords, relationship, partnership, trusted advisor, that's what we're here to be. Because, you as an organizer might have met in various cities, around the country and around the world, but every city is different. And nobody expects you to know intimately a destination like the CVB would, right? And so this is where we come in, and we being a membership organization, there are times when you have to be non-biased, right, in certain ways. But there's a little wink wink happening behind the scenes where we're never going to steer you in the wrong direction, right? We're going to give you solutions to your challenges that fit exactly what you're looking for. And that's where, whether you're a first-time user of Destination DC or any CVB, or you're, tenured in a relationship with, you've been with an organization for a long time. I mean, between Dianna and I, we have quite a few years under our belts. We won't say how many, but we certainly, as we were talking earlier, have the gray hair to show it. But it's all in a relationship, and at the end of the day, we're in the relationship business. And I love the video that we played at the top of the hour, because it shows the humanization, right? And I think that's something that is so often missing these days. Is people are looking for a transaction. We're so busy. Time is our most valuable commodity, right? But at the end of the day, we are all in this business because we like people. We're in the relationship business. We like helping each other, and we are all looking for collective success at the end of the day. And so that's, at our core, who and what we are. Dianna?
And as you mentioned, Melissa, too, you said this earlier, but the important piece is that, especially for those first-time people trying out Destination DC and bringing a meeting there, you're excited, and that's awesome. But what you really want is you want them to come back, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is something that's really valuable. We, again, going back to that large meeting profile, again, we talk about this with our stakeholders, and isn't it great that we have X number of citywides and yada, yada, yada. When you look at certain groups, we have one organization who sources a lot of meetings with us throughout the year. And when you run the numbers and you look at the economic impact, the total room night generation, the number of leads sourced, it actually is a much more valuable piece of business collectively than one citywide, right? And so this is what we constantly try and tell our teams, constantly try and tell, the association leads, corporate leads, what have you, is, again, that whole portfolio, the full value is so much more important than any singular transaction or, lead sourcing that we do.
And you're right, that takes time, which means you're asking questions. And I think sometimes people, when you talk about that time commodity, it can be frustrating, right? For our planners, are like, why are you asking me all these questions? When really it is, if you do that on the front end, then it makes for a much more thoughtful process. So Dianna, what about from your perspective? Obviously, the joke has always been in the industry, sell the dream, service the nightmare. We know that the services team is really nothing truly. I mean, it's an extension of the sales team, right? And you're the ones that are making sure that whatever has been promised, whatever has been sold is going to come to fruition, and then some, and they'll become those repeat customers that we all covet so much. So let's talk about it from your perspective.
So definitely. So that's how we determine success, is these long-term relationships that we have. And we cultivate that in services. We continue what our wonderful sales team does, and just continue the conversation. The sales team doesn't bow out as soon as it turns definite. They're still involved. So we work together. We're asking the questions and making sure between both of us that we get everything that the customer is looking for. So it's an easy transition, hopefully, for the customer, because we are having these conversations throughout the planning process.
Great. And talk a little bit about how your team, especially because such a big piece to that puzzle are those site visits and how important they are. Mm-hmm. So how does your team really help to enhance those and then help the planners discover what, we call the best of DC?
Absolutely. We love site visits. So we, first of all, start with tailored itineraries. So we don't do cookie cutter site visits. Every itinerary is custom built based on the event goals, the attendee profile, and the program vision. So whether you're looking for VIP worthy venues or walkable hotels, or maybe something under the radar, cultural gems, we line up a curated experience for that. So while the customer's here for that little bit of time that we get them to see what they want. So Could it be access to unique venues? You know, DC has iconic backdrops. So from museums, memorials, rooftops, mansions, embassies, we help open up those doors with our relationship. So that's how we give them exposure to DC and what everything we have to offer. So highlighting venues that aren't always on the top 10 list, or hosting events at amazing places, not the National Museum of Women and Arts or Union Station's East Hall or any embassy. So we try to not only expose them to all these things, but share our local expertise. So providing insights that they maybe might not find on AI or a search engine, what's happening in the city during the dates, how to navigate the city's community resources. So our team kind of brings decades of event experience and deep knowledge of our neighborhoods and how they can take advantage of that. So we're very proactive on flagging things that could impact their event and make sure while they're here on the site that they get to see that.
I love that. I think it's always my favorite thing too when I visit a city that I want to know what those local gems are. I mean, let's face it, like there's a lot of great chains out there. We know that when it comes to the restaurant scene, but man, when I go to DC, I want to go somewhere that I can't go anywhere else. So your team, I think Dianna really brings that to life. And speaking of bringing things to life, we talked about having some real world examples, and you all recently supported the American Institute of Architects conference last year. I know that that is an amazing show.
Mhm.
And what were some of the standout ways that DDC helped activate the city for this special event?
It was so much fun working with AIA. They just were big out of the box thinkers. I think they're actually getting ready for their event this week. So we started off to gain interest for the attendees, a curated microsite. Yeah, I know we all do microsites, but we went above and beyond for AIA because they wanted to highlight all the amazing architecture in DC. So we developed a custom microsite specifically for their attendees, so highlighting their everything from dining and transportation, but also exclusive experiences. So it was kind of like a digital concierge helping the attendees explore DC beyond the convention center. So showcasing their nearby restaurants, museums, and it also included conference branding and welcome messaging. So they felt like it was really for them. It wasn't just an offshoot of a website. It looked like it had the AIA website feel to it. But we also helped them kind of move into their what their programming was with cultural activation. So we knew that their audience was fabulous. They're deeply interested in architecture and design. So we worked with AIA to integrate the city in a meaningful way. So that included walking tours of DC's architectural landmarks, neighborhood explorations, and special accesses to different museums like the Building Museum, Renwick Gallery. It was amazing. Any part of the city you would look, you'd see a group of people. It looked like little field trips happening everywhere. So we really helped activate the destination visually. So it was just lovely that they took advantage of being in the city and supporting us by showing everybody how beautiful it is and why we love it. So it was an amazing show, and we helped support that and make sure that we shared with everybody in the city, hey, this group is coming. They're going to be interested in your architecture. Let's have some talking points about your building, about your restaurant. So if asked, you have that ready to go when they're here in town.
I love that. I
Yeah.
think also there's nothing better when you show up for a meeting and the community knows you're there, which is a really fun way to help make a big city feel small in a way, right?
Exactly it.
So we want to get just a bit of a temperature check on who we have with us today. So we want to do a quick poll here, which Lexi just put up on the screen. So we want to know, have you ever partnered with a DMO? Or like Destination DC, obviously, in your experience so far? Because we want to understand, are we talking today with evangelists, people that love us, or people that are unsure of us, that are still worried about the free thing? Who are we talking to? Okay, this is shaping up nicely. Meaning we have a very nice mix. So we've got just about 22 of our 35 people right now that are on. So if you haven't voted yet, please do. Okay, so like I said, a good mix. So 64% of you, yes, have worked with a DMO, either Destination DC or another one. And then 27% have not. So that is what we like to refer to as the land of opportunity today. And another 9% are considering it, which again, awesome. Thank you for being here. And we certainly hope that we will convince you by the end of this that you absolutely should consider partnering with a DMO such as Destination DC. But to really take home that example we talked about with the American Institute of Architects, we're going to show another quick video that Destination DC has regarding this show specifically.
The AIA conference is special because architects literally build cities and build the world. And so for us, it's much more than a convention center destination. It's really the entire city. We do almost 100 city architectural tours. People love that aspect of conference and being able to really appreciate the city and how far it's come.
I've done a lot of these type of conferences across the country, and I have to say that Washington, D.C. has been my favorite experience because of the community here, the locations, the restaurants.
The architecture in DC itself, it's beautiful to walk around and see such a good mix of new and of old.
DC is like a very vibrant community. There's so many things that you can do in DC.
I love that. I think that really brings to life sort of this section as we wrap it up. And really, again, DDC is not just this tourism office. They're not just this thing that's out there and you're not really sure what they're doing or how they get funded. They're actually your strategic partner, and they're ready to tackle those planning challenges, which we know you have a lot of right now, right alongside you, and be that extension. Because we know even at a time when a lot of us are still, I don't want to say we're in that like COVID recovery, but at the same time, things aren't the same. So really figuring out how to leverage a partner like Destination DC, I think is more important than ever. And when we talk about leveraging that partner, we're going to get now to this section where we talk about this value of early engagement. And yes, I know we're all seeing still last minute. I mean, MPI has their annual that's 2 weeks away, and we're still seeing those last minute registrations. The days of, registering 8 months in advance or whatever don't seem to be happening as often. But when it comes to engaging with a partner like DDC, it's actually really more important than ever to engage early. So Melissa, talk about what are some of the risks that our planners run into if they wait too long to reach out for your help.
Yeah, so Washington is a high demand city. Love it or hate it. Sometimes we are very excited by that, and sometimes we're like, when you hear that there's no availability, it's challenging. And so, understanding the dynamics of the city that you're working in, like DC, where we not only have group business and transient, but we have Congress to contend with, right? And so Congress, depending on when they're working, when they're in and out of session, we can predict that calendar based on historic trends. But it's sometimes difficult. And so when Congress is in session, it adds an entire different layer of complication to things, and availability becomes very scarce. The hotel rates soar, and, pattern becomes more and more vital than ever. If you're a Tuesday, Wednesday, when Congress is in session, might as well, go back to the drawing board. But these are the things that we can help with, because there are ways that we can overcome some of those objections. One of the things that we really love to provide, and only super savvy organizers take advantage of this, is we're happy to share what the citywide calendar is every year and what some of those big high impact events are every year, so that you can help plan around it. So if there's a citywide in and you have a group, which is, we affectionately call maybe an ugly baby, bad rooms to space, doesn't really fit all the needs. There are times when, if a citywide's in, hotels are taken up with their rooms, and they might have a lot more space, available and ready to sell without having to create that same impact with the room night commitment. And so those are some of the dynamics that we can help with. We can say, hey, there's a marathon happening in a city like DC, and Diana can go into this a little bit more about, that there's a whole new layer of what we call protest tourism. And so how do all of these dynamics fit in? And again, that's where we, as your partner and your trusted advisor, can say, hey, let us help you navigate through some of this. Let me let you kind of understand why a particular opportunity might be a little less desirable to our hotel community or our venue community, but here's what we can do to work together to, shift that a little bit. If you have, sometimes just the smallest amount of flexibility. And so there's a lot of things that understanding those dynamics very early is going to cut down on the frustration, saying, I'm in the year for the year. I have to book this in DC because maybe it's a legislative conference and I can't find availability anywhere. We can help navigate those. Diana works a lot with groups on a lot of those dynamics that are in Washington and other cities that might not exist elsewhere, and I'll let her dive into those.
I'm smiling, right? Okay, so the navigating protest, I mean, we're used to it, right? And, we're the nation's capital. So we regularly host demonstrations and marches and advocacy events. So some are planned well in advance and others are spontaneous, right? So this impacts traffic, security, hotel availability. So early engagement with DVC gives you access to real-time insights on what the city's activity calendar looks like. So we'll share what those major protests are: government events, high volume tourism periods, so you can make informed decisions on when you want to come into the city. But reminder, a lot of these events are organized and mission driven. So protest to tourism, not a bad thing. Some groups take advantage of the momentum. So for example, aligning with a rally for medical research when your event is here. In some cases, a protest isn't a disruption, it's an opportunity to tap into civic energy and create more, a better attendee experience. I remember we had a group in and they found out about a march that was happening during their event. And the planner was trying to kind of withhold that from them. Their attendees were so out there experiencing it, and they thought that was the best part of their experience in DC, was being able to be a part of history. So planning early helps us help you kind of get a better landscape of what that might look like for you while you're in DC.
Diana, a lot of this also is around cost savings too, right? So do you have a great example you could share with our audience here about a time when that early collaboration actually led to better venue options or cost savings?
Yeah, absolutely. We had a great example. We had a large scale group whose exhibitors, they historically booked all the key venues and hotel blocks before the host organization had even finalized their program footprint. And in the past, the planner just struggled to secure prime offsite venues for their events since these exhibitors were locking them up early. So this time they reached out to Destination DC early in their planning cycle. And we helped act as a liaison to help map out their venue availability before the exhibitor rush began. So we provided a citywide availability grid. So advise them on high demand dates that might, conflict with their event, including congressional sessions and other citywides. And we quickly held space at strategic venues so that they can meet their goals and budget. So because of this early engagement that they had with us this year, the planner not only secured the premium locations for their events, but they avoided paying inflated rates or costly last minute alternatives. So I know it's tough thinking about another city, maybe even 18 months or 24 months out, but if you know your exhibitors are really active and you want to get those prime spots, reach out to us. We'll start working on some suggestions for you and get you out here to look at these venues and lock them in before your exhibitors do.
That is a great example, and that one happens more often than you think, which always never cease to amaze me. And Melissa, I like the point you made too. Again, it's really around transparency, just this idea that you're happy to share that citywide calendar. I think people feel like, oh, I can't ask for that, or I'm not going to get that information. And just, again, really putting it out there in a transparent way in order to help your clients make the best decisions for their organizations. So when we think about best decisions or best times of the year, every city is unique. Some cities love a Sunday stay. Some cities really want you over the weekend. Some cities really don't want you over the weekend. What are some of those sweet spots, or perhaps the flip side of it, times to avoid? I'm thinking perhaps that cherry blossom time, although maybe you'll say no, that is the time to come. But what are those either prime times that your community loves, or the times when it's like, maybe not Destination DC for that time frame?
It all depends on what you're trying to achieve. Cherry Blossom attendees love
Fair.
it because it's built in, hyper local experiences, but you're going to pay.
There
And
you go.
availability is going to be tough. So, I think one of the biggest misnomers is, people always think, oh, over the holidays, Washington must be really busy, like 4th of July and, any given long weekend or the summertime, because there's a perception. And of course, we do have, everybody's been to Washington for their 8th grade student field trip. We know that. But, we over the summertime in DC, it's one of our lowest, more of our need periods, right? When the city's available, you're going to get the most competitive, rates. You're going to get the most amount of availability. Because again, Washington, so much is dependent on the congressional calendar. And when they're out of session, there opens up a whole, laundry list of hotels and venue options that are available. I always laugh at the 4th of July because people are like, oh no, this is, certainly a time that the city is bustling and overwhelming with people, flowing with people. And it's just simply not the case. So if you do have flexibility, and of course, I understand that, most people out there are not going to be able to, meet over a holiday, but look at the demographics of your attendees, right? We have an incredible amount of flexibility, and we deal a lot in international business. Well, an international attendee does not put the same emphasis on American holidays as Americans do, right? So depending on what your demographics are, look at that and really dissect and say, is my delegate base going to be impacted by this? Maybe yes, but maybe not. And there might be some flexibility, or if you can come in like on shoulders, or maybe holidays that, it might be a flexible holiday. We have many of those in the United States where people might take one holiday off instead of the other. And so look at all of that and see where there might be some options and some availability. And then of course in DC, the midweek, again, driven by the congressional calendar, the most desirable is weekend. Second next to that is a back half of the week, coming in starting Wednesday, etc. Then a Sunday arrival, and then only if you're lucky does a Tuesday, Wednesday night peak serve you well.
Well, and you're fortunate because you have a city that having a pattern on the weekend is not a bad thing with all the things you have to see and do. Yeah. And I will say, guilty as charged, I absolutely would think that you would be crazy busy over 4th of July. Yeah. So that, okay. Also, I think the message too is if you are considering a city like DC for an upcoming meeting, we want to encourage our planner audience to go and see it as a tourist, right? Absolutely. To go and check it out. So I think that's still an important message, because you're right. Obviously, if someone's not used to meeting over a holiday, they're probably not going to switch to that, but how can they still leverage that?
Yeah. And, we just launched a whole bleisure landing page, encouraging, I'm the queen of bleisure. When I travel, I love, even if it's, DC after dark, right? If you can't get away or you can't spend a pre or post weekend, we totally get that. But there's museums that are open late at night. There's incredible music, that happens after the conference ends, after 5 o'clock. I always like to joke and say, after 5 o'clock, we know how to take our pearls off and have a good time because, Washington gets a reputation for being a more conservative city, which is so not the case. You have Capitol Hill, and then you have a whole city that exists around it with, people like Dianna and I who live here, who we breathe the city day in and day out, that is anything but politics. And so come and take advantage. There's a lot of incredible opportunities that are coming up in the next few years. America celebrates its 250th birthday next year, and cities across the country, including and led by Washington, D.C., are creating incredible programming. So find out what's happening in that realm and how you can incorporate some of that, Americana into what's happening. Museums are doing special exhibits. There's always something going on. And as Diana and I joke, depending on who you are as an organization and who maybe your core values are and who you are at the base, chances are there's a Smithsonian exhibition that caters exactly to that, and how great would that be to maybe, if you can do maybe a reception around that, great, but go visit it as a tourist as well. It's a great thing to do that.
So we'll wrap up this section, and really the message here again is reaching out early is not just a nice to have. Do it if you have time. It's really that game changer, and it can impact your availability, cost, and then obviously the overall event quality. So it's never too early to be reaching out to this team here with DDC. So now we're going to segue right into creating authentic DC experiences, which Melissa, you just started talking about, because we all know that events are about more than just the sessions, and knowing that that's a huge driver for people coming, but they're also about the memories that are made around those sessions. Diana, I'm going to start with you here. How does DDC help planners create those unique offsite events or some of those city-based activations, as you mentioned, for AIA?
Absolutely. So we talked about access to the iconic venues. So let us help you with that. We have those relationships that can possibly get you into spaces that are not publicly listed or difficult to book. Work with us on that, and you can have an amazing selection of federal historic properties, but also reach out to us. Say you have an event, you're having a hard time placing it. We just launched the Connected Campus program, which highlights non-traditional venues like Nationals Park, the Anthem, which is a music venue, and cultural institutions like Andrew Mellon Auditorium. Post your event there, and we work with you with the hotels around there to make it a great campus feel for your meeting. So you're able to do multi-site events that are immersive and walkable and just definitely clearly DC. So we have these already spelled out. So check with us, and maybe you're having a hard time, don't give up. We can help you with that. We talked about customized itineraries, but I really want to lean into the cultural and historical integration, because DC, we have tons of it. So it's built into our destination. So we want to help you tap into the living history and diversity of the city. So is that civil rights tour, heritage tours, or it could be an offsite event at the National Museum of African American History and Culture. We have supported activations that tell stories from local historians and performance DC-based artists, or partnering with heritage organizations that can come really reflect the values of your audience. So just one of many few ways that we help kind of incorporate all of that into the activations is giving the planner some more options and some more insight into the city.
It's funny, we always say there's an association for everything, and in DC, there is a museum for everyone, I think. Melissa, on your side, the DEI and sustainability districts are really getting a lot of attention. And you mentioned this earlier, but explaining how planners are using those to align with what you call their event values.
Yeah, it's so we have two programs at DDC, the Sustainability District and the DEI District. And I think this comes under much debate right now, whether these are more DMO driven initiatives, or are these delegate driven, or are these that, planners feel a social obligation to incorporate. So both of these districts are very intentional programs that we put together. So sustainability focuses on our member organizations who, it's not a certificate program, but it is a checklist of assets that the hotel has invested in, or processes that they do that make them more forward thinking in the sustainability front. And therefore, we push them out to those organizers who make sustainability a priority. I think that there is still the misnomer that sustainability has a high price tag associated with it. And, depending on what you do, it certainly can. But there's so many things that just come at a regular baseline, complimentary or, social awareness cost that you can incorporate into your event. And so through the Sustainability District, we really push those initiatives and those members of DDC that participate in that. And then in the DEI front, we recognize that right now DEI is a very sensitive subject, right? Given the state of affairs within the United States, and Washington, D.C. at its core and Destination D.C. at its core, lean into and value DEI. And so I think one of the things that is part of those initial discovery calls is understanding, especially on the association front these days, is how are you funded, right? Do you have federal grant funding? In which case we need to be conscious of that, and we need to, treat things differently, package things differently, put different terminology around some of these initiatives, and be very conscious about that, so that we don't ever put an organization at risk. But when appropriate and when available, it is our intention to push DEI District, which is a group now of over 50, 60 member organizations who are local, small, maybe LGBTQ plus owned, Black owned, women owned. The list can go on. And these are businesses who might not understand how to work in the convention space. And this is a whole new, kind of landscape for them to understand and to market to. And so through the DEI district, for example, we had NATO's 75th anniversary last summer in the city. And gosh, it's hard to believe it's almost been a year now. And one of the things that they did was hyper local. They wanted to create these very high end, very exclusive swag bags for their delegates who are heads of state and, ministers and so forth. And they went all local, and they spent over $250,000 at our DEI Business Fellows. And so it's an incredible opportunity to, support a business who, might not otherwise have the same opportunity, and support local. Everybody wants to buy local these days. And so we facilitate that through the DEI Business District. And, what may be a small contract to a big organization, that small contract to a mom and pop business who's just getting started might make or break whether they exist as a company a year down the line. So they could be chocolate makers. They could be, locally made in DC candles. The list goes on, but, lean into your partners to understand what those businesses are and how they can, help provide, again, a hyper local experience for your delegates.
That's awesome, awesome example of local impact. And Dianna, I know you also have another unique partnership with the National Museum of Women in the Arts. So can you tell us about that?
Yeah, definitely. So through our partnership with them, planners basically gain access to the newly renovated museum. And it's a great backdrop to align with our organizational values and kind of represent what they're looking for. But for us, it's also promoting our cultural diversity in meetings. So we want to showcase the diversity of the city. So whether that's helping integrate that into programming, vendors, or offsite events, we've helped events feature go-go bands, which is, go-go's our music of DC. They go-go bands to local spoken word artists, food from different immigrant-owned restaurants for their welcome receptions. So we want groups to highlight the diversity in the city, and that's what we're here to help you with through partnerships that we have. But I also, before we run out of time, want to make sure that we also want to help groups spotlight social impact. So we intro them to community organizations and nonprofits for CSR activities, or even more, leaving a legacy. Most of our meetings come every 2 years, 3 years. Why not leave a legacy while you're in DC? And we can help them set that up and continue that.
I love that. And the stories you both have just talked about and the examples you've given, they really highlight how planners can create a truly meaningful, and here's the key, values-driven event that leaves a lasting impression. And we know that that's the stickiness, right? That's the stickiness we're all looking for. So as we move into our last section here today, We want to really make sure that you all know how to contact our friends here at Destination DC. But first, I want to have Melissa and Dianna both answer this question. When we talk about, we are in times of uncertainty, right? That's no news flash to anyone. If it is, let us know what you're doing because things are wonderful for you. So we want to learn from that. But as we look at the uncertain times, why should planners consider DC as a meeting location now more than ever?
You know, Washington is a place where you heard it at the top of the hour, where change happens, right? And if you look throughout the history of time, like some of the biggest, most impactful events have been ones that have changed the course of history socially. And so, you know, there's an opportunity, as Dianna had said earlier, to lean into that. But you know, we're dealing with a lot of different challenges that we haven't had before. And there's a lot of untruths out there about, you know, coming into the United States. And when people meet in a city like Washington, even if it's an American association or American corporation, chances are there's a huge subset of their delegates who come from all places around the world, right? And so immigration has become a huge topic of conversation, and it is something that I feel like I have somehow become a subject matter expert in to a certain degree. But you know, being in Washington and being right here, you know, we literally, like a stone's throw from here is the U.S. Travel Association, who is helping guide a lot of this conversation. We're creating toolkits. You know, we were just at IMEX Frankfurt last week. You know, Rachel, saw you there, and so much of the conversation was about these just complete misnomers about coming into the United States. And you know, oftentimes things haven't changed, but they're being enforced differently. So use your DMO, because we have, you know, we've gone to some drastic measures and we've spoken with immigration lawyers so that we can factually guide our clients through the process of how do they communicate to their delegates? How do we make sure that we're getting great information? How do you make sure that visas are being applied for in a timely manner? Which is one of the biggest challenges that we're seeing is, you know, information isn't getting out far enough in advance. And so as we, you know, are navigating these interesting times when things change daily through the administration, we are at the footsteps of it all, where we have access to all of these individuals who can help make things a lot easier. And so it's not just having access, but it's being a change maker. It's being in the city where you know, your voice is heard and you can have an active part in, you know, perhaps changing that course of history.
I love that. And Dianna, for us to wrap up today, we do have, as we know, people joining us that have not taken the step to use either Destination DC or a DMO. So tell them quickly or share a couple of examples about how you can help those first-time planners simplify and make their lives easier.
Absolutely. So whether you're a first-time planner, your event has grown, we'll help you with room blocks. I know that's very basic, but we've had, you know, the experience with customers come in and they're all over the city. We'll help condense that with you and get you flexibility, get you different price points. We'll help you with permit navigation. You want to do something grand outside, let's do it. Like Melissa mentioned, international travel messaging is huge right now. So we will help you with that. We will reach out if your speaker is having a problem getting into the country. We will work with you on getting that accomplished. And just sharing real-time updates about maybe this is the first time you've planned an event in DC. We'll give you the landscape, you know, reminder, you know, DC is a very international city, but it's also a community. People live here. And we will share kind of what that looks like so you can share that info with your attendees. So much. I just bottled it up real quickly, but
thank you.
There's so much we can help with.
And then Melissa, to wrap us, how can people start working with you?
Well, I would say for that 36% of you who has not or is considering working with a DMO, that's when you put it together, startling numbers. But reach out to us, understand who your point of contact is. And there's no question too big or too small. We field it all. And so, you know, use us as your subject matter experts. Like I said, your trusted advisor. Sign up for our newsletter, which It's very abbreviated, you know, it's nothing lengthy, but it's like, hey, here's the top 3 hit list that you need to know. Here's what's new, here's what's different, here's what's coming. And so through all of these avenues, you know, just reach out to us. We're all available online at washington.org, or just reach out to Dianna and I individually and find out who your point of contact is, and let's get started.
Well, thank you both. It's so funny because when we talked about doing this, I thought, oh my God, how are we going to fill an hour? Like, that seems insane. Well, folks, we have done that plus a minute, and I could talk to you two all day. I get so excited about DC when I talk to you, and I get so excited, you know, Melissa, you talked about it, that, you know, to bring a meeting to the place where change happens. I think that's so important. And hopefully what we've showed you today is that no matter where you are in that planning process, no matter where you are as far as what the size of your event, and even if you don't know if you want to commit to using Destination DC, but you have some questions, reach out. This is a team that leads with transparency and that wants to help you. And we hope for those of you that are already evangelists of Destination DC, you'll help us continue to spread that word. But just a huge thank you, Melissa and Dianna. I appreciate your time. Our viewers who tuned in and who will continue to tune in, we really appreciate your time. It is your hottest commodity and you gave it to us, and I hope we were good stewards of it. But in closing, just a big thank you to everyone, and love everything I heard here with our partners at Destination DC. Melissa and Dianna?
I just wanted to address, we did have one quick question about DMOs helping to find low-key fun and exclusive offsite activities. So that's Diana's sweet spot, and I'll let her close us out with that quick answer to the question.
Yeah, absolutely. We can help with that. We have a lot of these already on our website, but reach out. Happy to help.
I like the whole DC after dark, and I liked that you talked about after dark being maybe even just after 5. Because for some of us, you know, dark really could be close to bedtime, but I like the whole DC after dark after 5.
Right.
So thank you. You both are amazing. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. We appreciate you, and have an awesome week.
And thanks, MPI. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Again, just echoing how Rachel closed this out. Thank you everyone for joining us. The EIC still is processing this webinar, so tune back in for the submission of your clock hours. If you attended today, I have marked that down and we'll make sure we'll get that submitted for you. But thank you all. LinkedIn's are in the chat, and hopefully you have a chance to grab that QR code. If not, you can reach out to the MPI Academy as well, and we'll make sure you get the information. So thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll hope to see you on an upcoming webinar. All right, we still got a few people hanging out, but so good to see y'all. I'll shoot you an email soon.